Hello everyone, recently I made this cathedral in Minecraft. For me, the hardest part for most builds is actually coming up with an idea. So when I started building, I really had no idea what this build was going to look like. The only thing I knew is that since I've been experimenting with gray block palettes recently, I was going to use something using a lot of stone. When I was getting the initial shaping done, it started looking more and more like a cathedral to me. So that's what I ended up going with. What I ended up with was one large cathedral body with 4 towers at the corners. This gave it enough depth and height variation that I thought it would look pretty good. Looking back on this project though, I would have liked to have added more onto the sides of the cathedrals. The overall shape of the build is very narrow. I think it would have looked better if it had a bit more spread to it. For the block palette, I used a mixture of stone, andesite, and cracked stone bricks for the main body. And for the frame, I used a mixture of deep slate bricks and polished deep slate. This would give it its slightly worn look while also giving it a sturdy feeling. The windows took me a bit of time to figure out. At first I tried to use stained glass with a mixture of different colors, but it seemed really colorful for the type of build this is and didn't fit the mood correctly. Because of this, I decided to switch it out for tinted glass, which I feel fit the build a lot better. Roofs have been my nemesis for a long time now. For this one, I went with a simple 2 up 1 over pattern using nether bricks. I used nether bricks to add a bit more color to the build because right now it's looking very gray. To some surprise, I actually did an interior for this build. What some people do is they do actual research on their builds to figure out what's inside and how it would be used. That is not me. I just go on Google and search up what looks the best. So I really have no idea what goes on the inside of a cathedral. I'm just sort of guessing. Despite that though, I had a main altar for someone to speak at, and behind it I had multiple rows of pews for people to sit at and listen. For the interior, I stuck with roughly the same color palette as the exterior. Although for the floors and the ceilings, I added dark oak planks. This is because the interior doesn't have to be built up as strongly as the exterior does. So it's less likely that the exterior is built out of wood, but the interior probably would just to save on materials. When I was detailing, lighting started to become a big issue. So what I took a lot of advantage of was candles and light blocks. Candles make logistic sense to use because that's the light source they would be using at this time period that the build's set in. Light blocks though are an invisible block that they added in 1.17. And basically what it does, it's an invisible block that you can walk through and it just adds light. It comes in multiple light levels and it works well when you need to light up a large space and you can't put down a physical light source in every spot that needs light. I also put some floating candles in the central area just to add a bit more decoration to the room and also to add to the mood that the room had. After I had finished the interior, I was ready to start on the terrain. The terrain is something that a lot of people seem to ignore just because it's not the main focus of most builds. It helps add to the mood that you're trying to make, and it helps ground your viewer in a world that the viewer can imagine the build in. To start, I always add mountains around the edge of the terrain. It makes a sort of bowl that you can't see out of so that you don't see the super flat world on the outside, because that would break the immersion of the build. After I replaced all the sand with grass, I was worried it would look too plain, so I decided to add a river in one of the flat spots. After I had replaced all the sand to grass, I was afraid that the terrain would start looking too plain, so I decided to put a little creek in one of the areas that was more empty. What this also did is it gave me an excuse to decorate more of the terrain than I would have otherwise. For example, I had part of the creek fork off and cross over the path from the cathedral, and because of this, it gave me an excuse to build a little bridge connecting both parts of the path so that it's actually accessible. And just doing little things like that helps to ground your build into a world really well.